Chapter 41. Bristle Boars and Poisonous Scale Python. Shuiyu transformed into a blood-colored shadow, charging straight ahead without any intention of hiding. Its speed was so fast that the bristle boars couldn't react in time. Bloody claw marks appeared on the boars' bodies. Bang, bang, bang. Several bristle boars were instantly killed, their throats slashed before they could counterattack. They fell to the ground, twitched a few times, and then lay still. The remaining bristle boars finally reacted. They panicked and began to flee. The largest boar, clearly the leader, snorted out 2 streams of white mist from its nose. Its hind legs tensed, ready to spring into action. Despite choosing to confront the enemy rather than flee, the power disparity between them was too great. The boar leader arched its back, raising its sharp bristles. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Without hesitation, the boar fired its bristles like arrows, almost too fast to see. Glints of cold light rapidly approached. Yiling wasn't concerned about this counterattack, knowing that a first-order level 5 bristle boar leader couldn't harm Shuiyu. Sure enough, Shuiyu quickly raised its wide, robe-like sleeves. Clank, clank, clank. The sharp bristles hit the sleeves, making metallic collision sounds before falling uselessly to the ground. The boar's bristles weren't unlimited. Once used up, it would take time to replenish them. Unfortunately, the boar leader didn't have that time. Seeing its attack ineffective, the boar leader began to retreat, firing bristles to slow Shuiyu's advance and buy time to escape. The plan was good, but the reality was harsh. Shuiyu waved its sleeves, approaching step by step, unhindered by the bristles. Finally, the boar's bristles were exhausted, leaving its back bare. Shuiyu's wide eyes fixed on the boar, showing a hint of interest that Yiling couldn't see. The boar, sweating profusely, wanted to flee but hesitated, knowing turning its back would expose its weakness. It fidgeted nervously, ready to run at any moment. Just as the boar was about to act, Shuiyu transformed into a blood-colored shadow again, instantly passing by the boar. Slash! The sound of slicing flesh resounded. The boar froze, then collapsed after a few twitches. Its neck bore clear claw marks oozing blood and emitting faint black chi, Shuiyu's corpse energy, which would gradually infect the body and potentially turn it into a mindless, bloodthirsty walking corpse if not removed in time. Yiling planned to dissect the boar before this happened, not out of interest, but to obtain any potential evolution materials from its body. Meanwhile, in another part of the secret realm, Liu Wu, Yiling's classmate who despised him, had summoned his spirit pet, the poisonous scale python. At level 5 of the First Order, and nearly 8 meters long, the python's body was too thick for a person to embrace fully. Its blue-green scales held potent venom that could kill within an hour if left untreated, causing a gruesome death with bulging blood vessels and bleeding from all orifices. Though weaker than other class geniuses' pets, the python's poison made it formidable. Even Hua Xian'er's Earth Azure Dragon might struggle to win unscathed if directly poisoned. Confident in his python, Liu Wu immediately began searching the area upon arrival, seemingly looking for someone specific. Chapter 42. Revenge. Logically speaking, it should have been an easy task for Liu Wu to find a quiet place and spend the next 3 days there. After all, there was generally no first-order magical beast that would actively provoke the venomous python scales. Injure 1,000 of the enemy at the cost of 800 of one's own is a well-known principle. Even if one were to miraculously defeat the python scales, the deadly poison would not allow them to live for long. Therefore, unless it was a magical beast naturally resistant to the python scales' poison, no one would actively attack Liu Wu during this time. However, Liu Wu did not simply find a random place to survive for 3 days because he wanted to accomplish something. Nobody ever said during the first stage of the assessment that no one could attack other students. Within this secret realm, there were no rules, one merely needed to survive. And that was precisely what Liu Wu wanted. He was deeply dissatisfied with a specific person, to the point of hatred. That person was Yiling. Liu Wu deeply disliked Yiling. Especially since Yiling had repeatedly ignored him, Liu Wu felt disgusted. In Liu Wu's eyes, Yiling was just a worthless first-order level 2 spirit master. How dare he ignore Liu Wu? It should be the other way around. Additionally, Yiling had stolen the spotlight from Liu Wu in the classroom earlier, which Liu Wu was not at all satisfied with. After all, Liu Wu could be considered the strongest person in this class. Even those stronger than him from other classes did not dare to underestimate his venomous python scales. Liu Wu, feeling repeatedly provoked, had no intention of letting Yiling off the hook. The best method would be to eliminate Yiling within the secret realm. Without rules, no one would care if he killed Yiling. Even if someone witnessed it, so what? He had not violated any rules, so even the city lord would be powerless against him. This is why, as soon as Liu Wu entered the secret realm, he began searching for Yiling. However, he seemed to have forgotten his father's instructions from the night before, and his actions were now being guided by his emotions. His father had repeatedly emphasized that Liu Wu must pass the first stage assessment, no matter what. But now he had completely forgotten about that. Liu Wu could sit on top of the python scales without having to walk because of its size. Liu Wu was not very confident about his chances of finding Yiling. After all, this secret realm was truly vast, and even if he searched for 3 days, he might fail to find him. But Liu Wu had no intention of giving up this opportunity. Even if the chances were slim, he would continue. 3 days was all he needed. If he could find Yiling, that would be the best. If he couldn't, he would have to wait until the next stage of the assessment. Liu Wu's face was cold and grim, as if he had already envisioned Yiling's demise. Along the way, he encountered some magical beasts, but they could sense the faint threat emanating from the python scales and dared not approach. Even those magical beasts whose strength exceeded the First Order level 5 did not dare to attack recklessly. However, Liu Wu did not notice that, at this very moment, a pair of sharp eyes in the sky had already locked onto him. The python scales truly have their advantages in this secret realm, being able to traverse it without any magical beast daring to attack. Bai Tong said with a smile as he watched Liu Wu on the screen. Among magical beasts, those with toxic properties were naturally more threatening than others. The same principle applies to spirit pets. Obtaining a rare or mutated toxic spirit pet would provide numerous benefits, because the poison of such pets might not have any antidote, making the threat even greater. Well, what can I say? It's just the inherent advantage of someone else's family having such a powerful spirit pet. A natural head start, Luo Feng said. In the world of spirit masters, absolute fairness did not exist. The great noble families possessed tremendous power, and their scions could obtain powerful spirit pets from birth, giving them a significant advantage. It was not that ordinary cultivators had no chance of success, but compared to the scions of noble families, they were clearly at a disadvantage. If one could obtain a decent spirit pet as their first, they might have a chance. However, if their first spirit pet failed, all their hopes would be in vain. Lu Feng said this because he was from an ordinary family, not a noble one. Seeing Liu Wu's arrogant and overbearing manner, he felt a tinge of melancholy. However, when she heard Lu Feng's words, Hualing felt slightly uncomfortable. Hey, Lu teacher, you can't say that in front of me, all right? Even though I'm from a noble family, everything I've achieved is thanks to my efforts, she said. Hualing was a genius who had been incredibly intelligent since childhood, but she had not relied on her family's influence to become so powerful. Most of her strength was the result of her hard work. This was why, despite being from a noble family, Hualing was currently working as a teacher at the Black Tortoise Spirit Master Academy. She had achieved her current position through her efforts. Although her family had provided her with some assistance, this time she had come here on her own. Chapter 43. The Nightfall. This time, Hualing came here, following the family's orders, to recruit Huasiener. Lu Feng chuckled awkwardly. He realized what he had said was inappropriate. Teacher Hua, don't mind. It was just a spontaneous statement. I wasn't talking about you. Lu Feng was very clear about how Hualing had reached this position. His previous words had directly overturned the boat. Could Hualing be happy? Wasn't this indirectly implicating herself? Hualing snorted, hugging her arms and ignoring Lu Feng. This made Lu Feng feel a bit awkward. But who told him to have a big mouth? Back in the secret realm again. Many students had found their survival locations for the next 3 days. Of course, some unfortunate students were attacked by monsters upon entering the secret realm. Some students were luckier, and after much difficulty, they resisted the monsters, escaping unharmed and surviving. Some directly gave up the exam when they saw they had no way to fight the monsters. Compared to the exam, they cared more about their own lives. The most important thing is for them to stay alive. Otherwise, everything would be gone. Of course, there were also the unluckiest students who couldn't even activate the emergency teleportation in time before being killed by the monsters. The exam was so cruel. Here, there were no extra rules. Only surviving was the way. With so many students, dozens had already been eliminated. This elimination rate was truly worrying. Overall, no one knew how many students would successfully pass the exam. In the secret realm, the sunlight gradually faded and the night fell. During the day, the safety factor in the secret realm may be a bit higher. Once night fell, the danger factor would multiply. There would be more monsters out at night, hunting for food. And this was the most dangerous time. For many monsters, the night was their hunting season. They could see better at night, making it easier to hunt their prey. Even Liu Wu, who was desperate to find Yiling, did not dare to venture outside at night. If he was attacked by a group of monsters, even his venom scale python might have no chance to save him. Therefore, for his safety, Liu Wu did not rush but found a relatively suitable place to spend the night. Liu Wu's spiritual pet had one advantage. That is, at night, the venom scale python needs to form a circle with its own body, which can serve as a natural barrier. Liu Wu just needed to sleep inside the natural barrier formed by the venom scale python's body. With the venom scale python on guard, Liu Wu was not concerned about being attacked. It means that while Liu Wu sleeps at night, the venom scale python is always on guard and will wake him up immediately if there is a threat. But Liu Wu still didn't notice this. As he slept, a pair of sharp eyes stared at him from the top of a giant tree. For many students, the first night in the secret realm was a huge test. Some people might even die in their sleep. The lucky ones could escape the secret realm through emergency teleportation. Without a doubt, tonight, some people would disappear from this world forever. Yiling's situation was much better than Liu Wu's, who was sleeping in the wild. After hunting down a lot of monsters in the afternoon, Yiling saw the sky gradually darkening. Without any delay, he took Shuiyu and went to the mountain cave halfway up the mountain. When he returned to the mountain cave, the sky had already become slightly dark. A woo! A woo! When he returned to the mountain cave, Yiling could faintly hear the howling of wolves roaring from below the mountain. Creatures that hunted at night were not ordinary animals. 99% were likely to be monsters. Hearing the wolf howls, Yiling was alert. He had killed so many monsters, and there was a lot of bloodshed along the way. Monsters like demonic wolves have a very keen sense of smell. Both Shuiyu and himself were undoubtedly stained with the scent of blood. It was going to be a tough battle as these monster wolves followed the scent of blood to his location. However, that tough battle might also be an opportunity. A large number of demonic wolves resulted in a large number of experience points and potential growth. Yiling's goal was to hunt down more monsters so that Shuiyu could evolve further. The more monsters he killed, the faster Shuiyu would grow. The terrain on the mountainside was relatively narrow, especially this mountain cave with a narrow entrance. At least he didn't have to worry about the pack of demonic wolves rushing in. As long as Shuiyu stood at the entrance, it would be a one-man defense impassable. As long as he used this position well, Yiling was not at all worried that his safety would be affected. After all, demonic wolves were only first-order monsters. Chapter 44. Darkness, Monster Attack. Time passed slowly. Yiling had been on high alert ever since he heard the wolf howl earlier. At this moment, he had no desire to rest peacefully. Within this secret realm, resting during the day may be the best strategy. It is important to be on guard at night to avoid being ambushed by various monsters. However, visibility at night was too low. Even Yiling did not dare to be too reckless and deliberately hunted monsters at night. With only one Shuiyu, it would be impossible for him to hunt monsters safely. That was not feasible. As a result, monster hunting was only allowed during the day. A woo! At this moment, a wolf's howl suddenly rang out. Compared to before, this howl was closer. So they've come, Yiling thought to himself. Just as he had anticipated, the sensitive demonic wolves had followed the scent and found him. The alert Yiling tightly gripped the feathers he had obtained from the steel-winged bird earlier, which were as hard as steel. Although these items were ineatable, they made decent weapons, at least being very sharp. Even a demonic wolf could be pierced by these steel-winged bird feathers. At this time, in the sky outside the cave, the clouds were dense, obscuring the moonlight. This plunged the originally dimly lit secret realm into complete darkness. This was not just the case for Yiling's location, but throughout the entire secret realm. Some timid students were shivering in fear in their chosen survival shelters, for the night was the domain of many monsters. At night, it was much more dangerous, and one could easily lose their life if not careful. However, the powerful students were not concerned at all. They were confident in their abilities and did not worry about monsters coming to find them. The three top-tier families of Radiant City, aside from the Hua family, were the Li family and the Zhang family. At First Order Level 8, Li Xingtian, the second young master of the Li family, was the best student in the class. His spirit pet was a rock titan whose strength was not inferior to Hua Xian'er's Earth Azure Dragon. Li Xingtian had reached First Order Level 8 earlier than Hua Xian'er. As for the legitimate daughter of the Zhang family's patriarch, Zhang Shengnan, she also participated in this assessment. Although she had a beautiful appearance, she often dressed and behaved in a masculine manner, practically a man among women. Her strength was at First Order Level 7, and her spirit pet was even more special, a storm eagle, a flying-type spirit pet. Compared to the spirit pets of others, Zhang Shengnan's storm eagle, although only at First Order Level 7, could fly freely in the sky. This was an enormous advantage. Flying spirit pets were relatively rare. However, even these talented individuals were afraid to act recklessly at night. They had all found quiet places to wait for dawn. Zhang Xingnan's chosen place was a bit special. It was at the top of a giant tree, at least dozens of meters high. Ground-based monsters would not discover her presence up in the tree branches. As for aerial monsters, with the storm eagle by her side, Zhang Xingnan had no worries. Leaning against the tree trunk, Zhang Xingnan gazed into the distance, murmuring, "I wonder how Xian'er is doing." The Xian'er she mentioned was none other than Hua Xian'er. The two were very close friends, almost like sisters. Although Zhang Xingnan was more masculine, she still had feelings for Hua Xian'er that went beyond just friendship. She wanted to be with Hua Xian'er forever. However, Hua Xian'er only saw Zhang Xingnan as a good friend, unaware of these hidden feelings. As for Hua Xian'er, she didn't even need to find a shelter. The Earth Azure Dragon, with its massive size, was like a small mountain. Hua Xian'er could hide under the dragon's head, as no monster would dare to provoke such a formidable being. Outside the secret realm, not much time had passed. After all, the flow of time was different. The representatives on the viewing platform were interested in how many students would be eliminated overnight. Previously, dozens of students had been eliminated. Some were lucky and were teleported out, sustaining minor injuries, and taken to the medical room. The unlucky ones perished without a trace. These outcomes were nothing unusual to the representatives. They all knew the cruelty of this assessment. However, the current level of cruelty was still much better than what awaited in the future. Soon, more students were teleported out, their appearances utterly horrific. One was missing a hand, the right arm broken, leaving behind a gruesome, bloody stump with exposed bone. Chapter 45. The Shadow Wolfpack. After being teleported, the injured student collapsed on the ground, letting out a piercing scream. Their mouth and eyes were wide open, pupils constricted, and their forehead covered in cold sweat. There was fear in their eyes. Hearing the sound, Shang Lingkong furrowed his brow slightly and waved his hand, speaking calmly. "Take him away?" Yes, two subordinates quickly responded, and they lifted the injured student with the severed hand and carried him away. Shang Lingkong was able to maintain his composure because he was used to situations like this. He had witnessed even more bloody situations. This was nothing to him. The only regret was that this student's future was ruined. With a severed hand, they could only become an ordinary person. They would most likely be unable to join the military because it required physically fit individuals. As for the other representatives, each of them had experienced such things. Every year during the assessment, they had gone through similar trials and had become desensitized to it. To become a spirit master was a cruel effort. If they had no intention of becoming a spirit master from the beginning, it would have been better to give up. Yet these students did not want to give up on becoming spirit master, as only spirit master were considered superior beings. Not being able to become a spirit master meant being doomed to a lifetime of being an ordinary person. Having been immersed in this environment at the school, how many students were willing to give up this shortcut? In the pitch-black night sky, within the secret mountain cave, Yiling had vaguely sensed that a monster was approaching, and the distance was already very close. Unexpectedly, it was likely the previous wolves. A woo! The roar of the wolves echoed. Given the closeness of the sound, the cave was most likely already surrounded by wolves. Shuiyu also became alert, and the sharp claws on their hands suddenly grew longer, resembling small swords. "They're here." Yiling's gaze sharpened. The arrival of the Wolfpack was already within his expectations. He may not be able to sleep well tonight if these wolves are not eliminated. Sure enough, soon after, dark figures began to appear at the cave entrance. They could only be seen through their outlines in the dim light. A pair of glowing green eyes stared intently at the cave's entrance. Standing behind Shuiyu, Yiling finally confirmed the identity of these wolves. Shadow wolves, a pack-dwelling monster. They were typically level 5 or 6 First Order, with the leader being a level 7 First Order. These shadow wolves were around 2 meters long and over 1 meter tall, giving a strong sense of oppression. At this moment, Yiling suddenly noticed that the shadow wolves in the middle were turning to look at the sides. An even larger figure had appeared in front of them. Around 3 meters long and slightly taller than the regular shadow wolves, there was no doubt that this was the shadow wolf leader. Yiling could not tell how many shadow wolves were present because of the darkness, but he could be sure that there were at least 20, which was considered a good-sized pack of wolves. The shadow wolf leader standing at the front had high prestige within the pack. Without its order, the other shadow wolves dared not attack. A woo! After a moment, the shadow wolf leader let out a thunderous roar. The shadow wolves around it also began to respond in kind. A woo! A woo! After the roar, all the shadow wolves quickly launched the first wave of the attack. They knew the cave was narrow and could only accommodate one wolf at a time. The shadow wolves charged in one by one, but Shuiyu guarding the entrance was like an impassable iron wall to their furious assaults. With their bodies covered in bloody claw marks and a faint black mist emanating from them, every wolf was sent flying back. Yiling, who was trapped in a cave, appeared to be pleasantly surprised rather than anxious or tense. The reason he was not worried was that the terrain was highly defensible. He was delighted because shadow wolves were dark attribute monsters, which had a chance of dropping dark hearts and dark blood essence, potentially allowing him to collect the materials needed for Shuiyu's next evolution. As for the battle between Shuiyu and the shadow wolves, Yiling was not concerned at all. The power difference was evident, and Shuiyu was far superior to the shadow wolf leader, let alone the regular shadow wolves. Seeing that the attack in the cave was making no progress, the shadow wolf leader grew impatient. A woo! After another roar, the massive figure of the shadow wolf leader charged towards the cave entrance at an incredible speed, directly kicking away the wolves in front of it. The leader completely ignored these subordinates. Chapter 46. Crushing Zombie Transformation. It must be noted that this is the mightiest shadow wolf, the king among all its kin. No shadow wolf dares to defy any of its decisions or actions. That is why it can act so brazenly. However, the shadow wolf leader appears to have overestimated its strength. After all, it is only a level 7 monster, while Shuiyu is a level 9 spirit pet. Moreover, Shuiyu is exceptionally powerful even at the same level. How could the shadow wolf leader possibly be its match? As the shadow wolf leader charged forward, a flash of bloodlight flickered in Shuiyu's pale eyes. Immediately, Shuiyu transformed into a beam of blood light, moving with such speed that it caught the shadow wolf leader by surprise. Sizzle! 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 The leader's forepaws frantically scratched the ground, leaving deep gouges as sparks flew. Fearful, the shadow wolf leader stopped in its tracks. But its eyes, which could usually see everything in the pitch-black darkness, could not detect Shuiyu's whereabouts. It had only seen a flash of bloodlight. What had happened, the shadow wolf leader had no idea. While the shadow wolf leader was on edge, Shuiyu's figure finally appeared. Instead of being at the cave entrance, Shuiyu was now above the shadow wolf leader's head. Shuiyu then aimed for the leader's eyes with its sharp claws and struck viciously, instantly piercing through the shadow wolf leader's eyes. Whoa! The shadow wolf leader felt a flash of blood cross its vision, and then it could see nothing at all. Soon, unbearable pain shot through its brain, causing it to roar in fury. It shook its head violently, trying to fling Shuiyu off, but it was too late. Its eyes were now blinded. The eyes that could once see through the night as clearly as the day were now completely damaged. Even if it managed to cling to life, it would lose its position as the leader. Whether animal or monster, it is the way of the world. The strong dominate the weak, and once the strong are no longer strong, they lose their ruling status. Amid the Shadow Wolf leader's agonized howls, the rocks trembled, testifying to its immense suffering. At that moment, the other Shadow Wolves that Shuiyu had previously scratched underwent a strange transformation. It seemed that the cold environment had accelerated the activation of the corpse miasma within them. One by one, the Shadow Wolves' originally dim green eyes turned into a crazed blood red. Furthermore, these transformed Shadow Wolves let out deep, rough sounds, and copious amounts of saliva dripped from their sharp fangs onto the ground. Wu! The Shadow Wolves affected by the corpse miasma opened their blood-red jaws and viciously bit into their comrades who were unprepared. Wu! The unsuspecting Shadow Wolves let out anguished howls as they were struck down, unable to comprehend why their companions were suddenly attacking them. One by one, the originally intact Shadow Wolves were knocked to the ground, blood gushing from their wounds. The crazed Shadow Wolves showed no signs of stopping, continuously tearing at the flesh and blood of their former allies. The blinded Shadow Wolf leader could only hear their subordinates' agonized cries and howls. Besides that, it could hear nothing else. Shuiyu stood silently in front of the Shadow Wolf leader, curious as to what it would do next now that it had lost its eyes. Swinging its powerful forelegs aimlessly, the Shadow Wolf leader could only rely on its keen sense of smell and sharp hearing to guess Shuiyu's location. Facing this chaotic assault, Shu easily evaded each strike with grace. The blood flowing from its eyes down to its nose affects the Shadow Wolf leader's sense of smell. What was supposed to be a perfect hunt had subsequently turned the hunter into the prey. The sudden role reversal left the Shadow Wolf leader highly disoriented. After evading the leader's attack once more, Shuiyu pushed off the ground with its legs, launching itself into the air. Performing a 360-degree midair spin, it delivered a powerful kick to the Shadow Wolf leader's skull. Whoa! The Shadow Wolf leader let out a cry of agony. Its massive body was sent flying by the tremendous force, crashing into the nearby mountainside with a thunderous impact. Chapter 47: The Excitement of Bloodshed. Shattered rocks splattered on a mountainside, kicking up a cloud of dust. But it was impossible to see anything that night. Even with the flying dust, it didn't make much difference. The Shadow Wolf leader was full of energy and arrogance at first. He thought Yiling was just a morsel in his mouth. But unexpectedly, he now found himself in a pitiful state. The Shadow Wolf leader smashed against the mountainside and slid down along with a large amount of debris. Huff huff. A heavy panting sound rang out. The chaotic Shadow Wolf leader lay horizontally on the ground, his abdomen heaving up and down continuously. A-woo! A-woo! Now, the only ones still standing were the Shadow Wolves infected by the moist air. The ones infected with a miasma had almost all been bitten to death. A large amount of blood flowed on the ground, trickling down the mountainside. Thud, thud. Soon, one by one, the infected Shadow Wolves collapsed to the ground. Their bodies began shaking continuously. They seemed to have reached their limit. After shaking for a while, these Shadow Wolves also lost all movement. The miasma initially made them indiscriminate in their attacks, assaulting any target aside from Shuiyu. But in the end, the miasma poisoned their hearts, naturally leading to their deaths. Although Yiling couldn't see the situation clearly, he could roughly sense what was happening. Spiritual vision. To see the details clearly, Yiling activated his spiritual vision. With it, he could see even in the pitch-black darkness. However, compared to other spiritual techniques, spiritual vision requires constant consumption of spiritual power to maintain. In general, spiritual vision was unnecessary. It was only used in unfavorable conditions where the eyes could not see clearly. As the spiritual vision activated, Yiling felt his spiritual power gradually flow towards his eyes. Slowly opening his eyes, a faint blue glow covered them, the color of spiritual power. The original pitch-black environment was now fully revealed before Yiling's eyes. Many Shadow Wolf corpses lay silently outside the cave, with a large amount of blood on the ground. The massive Shadow Wolf leader also lay there, clinging to life. Seeing a large amount of blood, Yiling felt a headache coming on. For many monsters, the scent of blood would attract them. Now that so many Shadow Wolves had died here with so much blood, it would undoubtedly attract even more monsters. If he didn't want to be surrounded by more monsters, Yiling needed to leave this place as soon as possible and find a more suitable location. This problem alone was enough to give him a headache. But now that it had reached this point, What could Yi Ling do? Yes, this big fellow isn't dead yet, so let's help it. Shui Yu, finish it off. Just as Yi Ling was feeling troubled, he suddenly remembered that the Shadow Wolf leader was still there. This big fellow had far more experience than the other Shadow Wolves. Most importantly, the Shadow Wolf leader might have a dark heart. The higher the monster's level, the more materials it would have, and the more likely rare materials would appear. Following the order, Shui Yu approached the Shadow Wolf leader. Seeing the heavy breathing of the Shadow Wolf leader, Shui Yu showed no mercy. Raising its sharp claws, it viciously slashed the leader's throat. Squelch! The soft throat was instantly cut open by the keen claws, and a large amount of blood spurted out. Shui Yu didn't seem to shy away from the leader's blood at all. Looking at the blood on its claws, it even seemed slightly excited. Something in the leader's blood piqued Shui Yu's interest. The blood splattered onto Shui Yu's shimmering robe, sliding down without sticking to it at all. This scene was naturally noticed by Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling remembered the information about zombies from his previous life. Zombies were extremely sensitive to blood and could even become stronger after drinking it. Since arriving here, Yi Ling hadn't let Shui Yu drink any blood. Not because Shui Yu did not want to, but because it was Yi Ling's spirit pet and would follow all of Yi Ling's commands. If Yi Ling didn't give such an order, Shui Yu wouldn't do something unnecessary. Even when facing blood, Shui Yu seemed to have incredible restraint, remaining completely still. If you want to drink, then drink, Yi Ling said indifferently. Receiving the order, a flash of blood light shone in Shui Yu's pale eyes. Shui Yu opened her mouth and sucked gently. The blood in the body of the Shadow Wolf leader seemed to be attracted by something. The blood slowly entered Shui Yu's mouth. As the blood entered its body, a glimmer of vitality flashed in Shui Yu's eyes. She was happy to be able to drink the blood. Chapter 48. Silence. While Shui Yu was sucking blood, Yi Ling quietly started his post-processing work. There were so many shadow demon wolves, enough for him to deal with for a while. He began to deal with the corpses of these shadow demon wolves. As for whether there were any living shadow demon wolves among them, Yi Ling was not worried at all. Shui Yu was very sensitive to smells, so she would be able to tell if any were still alive. After a long period of collecting spoils, Yi Ling finally dealt with all the shadow demon wolves. The harvest was indeed very fruitful. In addition to some evolution materials that he could not use for the time being, Yi Ling also obtained the materials he needed. As expected, the heart of the Shadow Demon Wolf leader was indeed the dark heart needed for Shui Yu's evolution. And so many Shadow Demon Wolves also provided more than 10 drops of Dark Essence blood. This means that the materials for the next stage of Shui Yu's evolution are ready at this moment. Now, the only thing to wait is the growth rate. As long as the growth rate reaches 100%, Shui Yu can proceed to the next stage of evolution. Looking at the current growth rate of Shui Yu, Yi Ling showed a bitter smile on his face. The growth rate is only 51.2% so far. Although it has increased compared to before, it is still too little. However, this is reasonable. If the growth rate is so easy to increase, many spirit masters will not let their spirit pets get stuck in the evolution place. Materials may be easier to obtain early on, but this growth rate can only be accumulated gradually over time. Of course, the more battles you fight, the greater your natural growth will be. Fortunately, Yi Ling has a system that can check the growth rate of Shui Yu at any time and see the materials needed for evolution. As a result, many detours are unnecessary. When Yi Ling was dealing with the corpses of these shadow demon wolves, Shui Yu had already sucked all the blood. She stayed quietly aside, waiting for Yi Ling's instructions. Compared with before, Shui Yu, who absorbed a lot of blood, seemed to have a stronger blood energy in his body. Of course, if you don't observe, you may not be able to see it. At this time, outside the secret realm, the scene was silent. At this moment, everything was silent. Even though the secret realm was too dark, the battle scene on the screen was shown to everyone. Even at the beginning, some people thought that Yi Ling would choose to give up. Because there are so many shadow demon wolves, even a genius student may be unable to stop them. After all, there was only one spirit pet, and he had to face more than 20 shadow demon wolves, especially since one of them was a shadow demon wolf leader. Such an outcome was certain. However, the strength displayed by the Shui Yu in Yi Ling's hand completely blinded their eyes. One man guarding the past 10,000 men cannot open it. With the power of a spirit pet, he resisted so many shadow demon wolves. Not only that, he finally defeated all the shadow demon wolves and also defeated a shadow demon wolf leader. This might be a bit scary if it was said out. Even teachers like them did not dare to say that they did better than this when they were conducting the assessment of the Spirit Master Academy. With such strength, it is almost certain that there is no big problem in entering the top-tier Spirit Master Academy. This Yi Ling has something. Hua Ling stroked her hair gently. She now has a strong interest in Yi Ling. As for why she knew his name, it was because she had seen it in the information on Shang Lingkong's microcomputer before. Hua Ling believes that Yi Ling deserves to be in the first place if the valuation is only taken into account for the first stage. This strength is indeed a bit terrifying. Similar to Hua Ling, the representatives of the other 3 top-tier Spirit Masters Academies were also very interested in Yi Ling. Even Hong Xiu, the representative of the Vermilion Bird Spirit Master Academy, which does not recruit male students, was the same. What I care more about now is his spirit pet, which is very powerful. Lu Feng had previously observed Yi Ling's spirit pet trio. After this battle, Lu Feng became even more curious. Fortunately, Lu Feng did not see the scene of Shuyu sucking blood. Otherwise, he would be even more shocked. Bai Tong also agreed with Lu Feng's words. Yes, his spirit pet is very powerful, and didn't you notice? His spirit pet seems to have a certain toxicity. The shadow demon wolves that were attacked first just now went crazy in the end and took the initiative to attack their companions. These shadow demon wolves must have been stimulated by something to become so crazy. The greatest possibility is that this spirit pet has some toxicity. Bai Tong's analysis was very logical. The other 3 also nodded. Although I'm also a little interested in him, alas. But it's a pity that he is a male and cannot enter our Vermilion Bird Spirit Master Academy. When this issue was mentioned, Hong Xiu let out a deep sigh. Hong Xiu was also helpless about this rule of the Vermilion Bird Spirit Master Academy. But the rules are the rules, and no one is allowed to break them. Chapter 49. Speculation. It hurts to witness the 3 of you fighting over such a talented student, while I can only watch helplessly, Hong Xiu said with a slightly helpless expression. Hearing this, Hua Ling responded with a smile. Hong Xiu, sister, you can't blame us for this. It's your school's regulation that you didn't want him. It's also a good thing that Yi Ling is male. If he were female, there would probably be even more academies competing for him. Hong Xiu could only sigh deeply. In addition to the representatives of the 4 top-tier Spirit Master Academy, other Spirit Master Academy had also noticed Yi Ling. They could only smile bitterly to themselves, knowing that such a genius would be out of reach. The higher the rank of the Spirit Master Academy, the better the treatment they provide. Moreover, their faculty is also much stronger. This is something that the other Spirit Master Academy cannot compete with. Compared to this, it's easy to guess how others would choose. Unless, during the following evaluation, Yi Ling can't even make it into the top 10. Only in this case would these high-tier Spirit Master Academy have a chance. Students ranked outside of the top 10 are typically not given consideration by the top 4 Spirit Master Academies. This time, they were just casually thinking about it. Given Yi Ling's strength, it would be weird if he did not even place in the top 10. Meanwhile, Shang Lingkong sat in the front row, occasionally looking at the information in his hand. He had thoroughly examined Yi Ling's past experiences and found no abnormalities. Shang Lingkong was relieved by this, as it confirmed that Yi Ling was the real person. As for why Yi Ling's zombie spirit pet had suddenly become so powerful, Shang Lingkong speculated that perhaps Yi Ling's zombie spirit pet was different from ordinary zombies. Shang Lingkong knew very well what ordinary zombies were like. However, Yi Ling's zombie was different from ordinary zombies. Ordinary zombie spirit pets, apart from having stronger defense and greater strength, move very slowly and can only jump around, unable to walk on 2 feet. But Yi Ling's zombie spirit pet was astonishingly agile and didn't need to jump around at all. It was clear that this was not an ordinary zombie spirit pet. Shang Lingkong had reason to suspect that Yi Ling's zombie spirit pet might have undergone some kind of abnormality. Or perhaps it was a spirit pet similar to a zombie, but not quite the same. As for the issue of zombie evolution, Shang Lingkong had never even considered it. After all, no one has succeeded in evolving a zombie spirit pet since the beginning of Spirit Masters. Shang Lingkong could not believe that Yi Ling, an ordinary student, could achieve this. If Yi Ling had indeed accomplished this, It could be said to be a pioneering feat that will be recorded in history. However, Xiangling Kong did not believe Yiling was capable of such feats because they seemed too unbelievable. After all, the Federation might have countless researchers specifically studying these evolutionary methods. With so many years of effort by so many people, how could it be easily accomplished by a young person? Zombie spirit pets had previously been researched, but the results were always unsatisfactory, and the entire project was eventually abandoned. Xiangling Kong decided that after Yiling came out, he would have a good chat with him to see what kind of spirit pet he had in his hands and resolve the doubts in his mind. Back in the secret realm, in the blood-scented half-mountain cave, Yiling had to leave this comfortable stronghold and find a new place to stay. The blood scent was too strong. It would not be long before a swarm of monsters gathered here. Yiling had no choice but to leave this comfortable environment for his own safety. At this time, the clouds in the sky parted, and the cold moonlight once again bathed the secret realm. Yiling and Shuiyu set off to find a new dwelling place. As for where the new dwelling place would be, Yiling hadn't thought of it yet. Yiling had learned from his mistakes and would be more cautious this time. He would try his best not to lead the monsters to the place he would choose to survive next. While Yiling was looking for a new dwelling place, countless monsters in the forest were slowly approaching the previous stronghold on the mountaintop. Various carnivorous monsters were flocking to the half-mountain area. The overwhelming blood scent had made them lose their way. When they reached the half-mountain, they realized that there were a large number of shadow wolf corpses there. Except for a small number of monsters, most monsters disdained to eat the corpses left behind directly. Thus, the monsters of different races turned their attention to the other monsters closest to them. In the forest, they were prey to each other. Now, with the blood scent gathering them together, how could they miss the opportunity to attack their enemies? Roar! A large number of monsters entangled with each other, and the battle began. Chapter 50. The Pitiful Liu Wu. This area has drawn the attention of numerous monsters that surround the mountain. This indirectly eased the pressure on the students previously surrounding Yiling. Many fierce monsters had left, and if they couldn't make it through the first night, it would either be due to their weakness or sheer bad luck. Leaving the cave, Yiling walked under the moonlight with Shuiyu. Luckily, many monsters had been drawn away, so Yiling didn't encounter too many obstructions. Even then, Shuiyu handled them with ease. After searching for a while, Yiling couldn't find the ideal place he had in mind. Compared to the previous cave, the places he discovered afterward were not particularly safe. In the end, unable to find a suitable spot, Yiling could only settle for somewhere temporarily to get through the first night. The latter half of the night was relatively calm, with no monsters disturbing Yiling's rest. In contrast to Yiling's carefree situation, Liu Wu, who saw him as a mortal enemy, encountered significant trouble. A big figure was running away in a panic through the dark forest. This figure was Liu Wu's poisonous scale python. Sitting on the poisonous scale python, Liu Wu clutched his left arm. Bright red blood was flowing down his fingers. Earlier, Liu Wu had been traveling for a long time and was already quite exhausted. As a result, he fell asleep while the poisonous scale python was surrounded. Before he had slept for long, sharp feathers suddenly shot down from the dark sky. Although the poisonous scale python was alert and woke up immediately, its thick scales could only block most of the feathers. Unfortunately, the poisonous scale python couldn't block all of them. Since it was a hasty response, being able to block the majority of the feathers was already quite impressive. The remaining feathers landed on the ground and tree trunks. Liu Wu also couldn't escape this attack, and the sharp feather had only cut open his left arm. The injury wasn't life-threatening, but the deep wound exposed the flesh and blood. The sudden, intense pain immediately woke Liu Wu up. He was sure that a monster had attacked him when he felt the unbearable pain in his left arm. The feathers blocked by the poisonous scale python landed in front of Liu Wu. Seeing the feathers, he immediately realized the attacking monster had come from the sky. Although he didn't know what kind of monster it was, a sky monster was a huge threat to Liu Wu. However, when he looked up, he was shocked to find the sky was pitch black. With human eyes, he couldn't see anything. Enduring the pain in his arm, Liu Wu decisively made a decision. Poisonous scale python. Quickly run. Without hesitation, he rode the poisonous scale python, preparing to flee. Receiving the order, the poisonous scale python twisted its massive body and sped forward through the dense forest, hoping the forest cover could shield them from the monster in the sky. However, although the poisonous scale python moved incredibly fast, it was still far from enough to escape the sky's prying eyes. In the sky, a pair of sharp eyes never left the poisonous scale python and Liu Wu. The poisonous scale python's enormous size made it a perfect target. In the sky, the owner of those piercing eyes was a raptor monster even larger than the steel-winged birds Yiling had encountered, the black feather eagle. With a wingspan of over 4 meters, a sharp hooked beak and dark brown claws shimmering in the moonlight, its talons could easily tear a person apart. Possessing extremely keen vision, once this monster had its sights on its prey, it would be nearly impossible to escape. The black feather eagle didn't immediately attack the fleeing Liu Wu and poisonous scale python. Instead, it slowly followed behind, keeping a certain distance, toying with them like a cat playing with a mouse before the final pounce. As he raced through the forest on the poisonous scale python, Liu Wu's face was pale. He didn't even have time to treat his wound, and the deep scratch kept bleeding nonstop. Hurry, run faster. Liu Wu repeatedly glanced up at the sky, the chill never leaving his heart. It was clear the sky monster was still following them. Damn it! Why are you chasing me? Liu Wu cursed as he fled.